probably one of the more fun movies that's come out in the last few weeks. So, I mean, take your kids to it, whatever. But don't expect it to be Schindler's List or anything. That was
a weird comparison. I definitely don't expect Schindler's List. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Nerd You're Looking For podcast, a weekly nerd culture podcast that discusses the culture through various segments. My name, of course, is Patrick Kuhn, alongside my co-host, as always, that Tyler Hunt. How's it going, man?
It's going well. How are you?
This podcast is not off to a good start so far. For some reason, I had like a stroke while I was trying to do the intro. I couldn't speak for a little bit there, but that's no different than any other episode, I suppose. But no, I'm doing great. I'm finally back from third, so that was unfortunate for a few weeks. I felt like I was tired all the time, but I'm finally back, so I'm done complaining about that every episode.
Literally 5 minutes ago, you go, man, I'm so tired.
That's because we've been busy as fuck at work. Like, I finally get back to first shift, and my reward for that is working like 10 hours every single day and being just busy. It's been crazy at work. And
yeah,
I actually have to work tomorrow too. So this is my Saturday to work. So it's not going to be fun.
Well, that sucks.
Yeah. But I do have a 4-day weekend next weekend because Thursday's my birthday. And the company that I work for gives you your birthday off no matter what.
Are we going to celebrate by going to see The Conjuring?
We are. I mean, that's going to be one of the things that I do. I think I'm actually going to go to tattoo shop and see if I can't get my key work tattoo, Coheed and Cambria key work.
Yeah, you lost me for a second. I thought you had another stroke.
I could see your eyes go blank, and I was like, yeah, he doesn't know what I'm talking about.
I almost set up an appointment with the tattoo artist for yesterday. But then I didn't, so the story isn't that cool. Yeah. But, yeah, do you have an artist in mind?
No, I mean, the key work is pretty simple, and it's just going to be black with some little bit of shading around it. So, yeah. I mean, it's honestly not that difficult. So I'm not that terribly anxious about a particular person. Since it's been a couple of years since my last tattoo, I don't know if the guy that's done a couple of my tattoos even works in town anymore.
Yeah.
The shop that he used to work at is really shady in Evansville. It gets shady pretty quickly. And so the shop that he used to work at, it's actually a really nice shop. It's just in a bad part of town. And so I'm not sure if I even want to go to that shop anyways. So I'm actually just going to go to the closest one and just see what happens. That's actually how people get hepatitis. Just go to the quickest one and see what happens. That's exactly how people get hepatitis.
So worst case scenario, you get hepatitis. Best case scenario, you get your tattoo.
Yeah, pretty much.
Sweet.
So before we get started, normally we just jump right into what we're into, but my wife actually had a really good idea. PopCon's coming up. I'd like to say that this is probably her second best idea ever. Is she decided we're getting new t-shirts, just Tyler and I, we're getting a few new t-shirts, and it only took us 3 PopCons to realize that we probably should wear t-shirts that like advertise who we are. And she came up with the idea that we get an extra t-shirt to give away at PopCon. But we just didn't want to sell it. I mean, that seems lame. So we actually wanted to give it away, but we wanted to give it away to somebody that actually listens to the podcast. So she thought of having a code word, of us announcing a code word on this episode and next episode, leading up to PopCon. And the first person to say that to us gets the free t-shirt. So I put Tyler in charge of coming up with the code word, and since we're reviewing TMNT Out of the Shadows, he decided that the code word was going to be Cowabunga, which I am regretting that I said that was okay.
In all fairness, that wasn't my first suggestion.
Don't say your first suggestion.
I'm not going to, but it wasn't my first suggestion.
It wasn't, but your first suggestion was worse.
I don't know about that. It was not as politically correct.
Nobody can see that you did quotes right there. You did the air quotes, but nobody can see it except for me. But yeah, so our code word is Cowabunga, and we will be giving the first person that says it to us at Indie PopCon a free t-shirt. Hopefully you wear a large, because that's the t-shirt we ordered.
I just thought of a terrible scenario. What if somebody cosplays as one of the turtles and comes up to our booth and says Cowabunga?
Then they get a motherfucking t-shirt.
Out of coincidence. Okay.
Yeah. I highly doubt someone's just going to come up to us and say Cowabunga.
We'll see. I would probably lose my shit.
I will have to qualify. Matt and Tiny, you are not eligible for the free t-shirt. We appreciate you guys listening.
Yeah.
But you guys don't get the t-shirt.
That's fair.
All right. So we will just jump right into the episode. We start off each episode by checking in with each other. We call it what we're into. So Tyler, what are you into this week?
I've been playing a little bit of Overwatch. Are you familiar?
I know of Overwatch, of course, being big gamers that we are. I did not pick it up though.
Yeah, I wasn't going to pick it up. And then I just saw everyone raving about it online and at work. Some of my team members didn't have to push very hard to convince me that it was worth buying. And I got it, and I just started playing it yesterday, actually. So I haven't dove in super hardcore or anything, but I have played for a few hours, and it really is a lot of fun. I didn't really know what to expect because Blizzard created this game, and they're of course most known for World of Warcraft. And while I like I can respect World of Warcraft. I played a little bit. It's not my type of game. So I knew this was a first person shooter, but I didn't know how it would compare gameplay wise to a game like World of Warcraft. And luckily it's completely different. I guess you could probably tell that by it being a first person shooter and
Sure.
World of Warcraft being real time strategy. So basically Overwatch is a simple game, but it's not so simple.
Okay.
So there's not a lot of game modes. It's only online. There's no story mode. It's just multiplayer. You play as a team of 6 against another team of 6, and there's a few different game modes. I've only dove into one of the game modes, which is Assault and Escort, which is basically one team is trying to escort this vehicle to the other side of the map, and the other team's, of course, trying to stop them. What's cool is, I believe, I'm going to get this wrong, but I think there's 25 different characters, and each character has different abilities,
Sure.
different things they can do. There's people that can heal. There's the defenders, just different classes, I guess.
Sure.
I don't know, man. It's a lot of fun, but at the same time, it was $60 for a game that only has a few modes and only multiplayer. And what bugs me is Star Wars Battlefront got a lot of shit for not having a story mode and just being multiplayer. And this game is the same scenario, same price, but people just have fallen in love with it. And I want to say it had 100% on Metacritic for quite a while. I don't think it's there anymore, but just getting rave reviews. And I mean, it's a lot of fun, but I think that the price tag for what it offers so far is a little steep. I'm excited to keep playing it and getting into the other modes and exploring other characters and classes. But in the end, sometimes you want a campaign and you're not going to get it in this game. So, I don't know. I think that a lot of it has to do with Blizzard has its fanboys.
For sure.
And some of it stems from that, but I also don't want to take away from this game because it is a lot of fun. I just don't know that it's 100% on Metacritic, type of amount of fun, you know?
Yeah, sure. Would you say that some of the criticism for Battlefront is somewhat because it's Star Wars and there's a certain expectation for people for Star Wars, plus the multiplayer, which is its only function, isn't done extraordinarily well in Battlefront. So it's like,
No,
if you're going to do one thing, you should at least do that one thing great.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't want to draw the huge comparison between the two. They're different types of games. Overwatch is more goofy and the graphics are more cartoony.
Sure.
And like you said, Star Wars tries to be like the Star Wars universe. Yeah. And I'm just saying that I think there is some bias there because Blizzard made this game and EA made Battlefront, and EA is pretty genuinely hated by like the people that consider themselves hardcore gamers.
Yeah.
You know, so I think that there is some bias there. I don't think that it's the complete reason why Battlefront did poorly compared to Overwatch. Because, I mean, just by playing Overwatch, I've had more fun playing Overwatch than I had Battlefront. It definitely deserved the better reviews. But I think that there is that bias there, which kind of rubs me the wrong way.
Okay.
All right, man. What are you into?
I am into the second season of Bloodline. This is a Netflix original. I talked about it sometime last year, after the first season wrapped up. It revolves around a tight-knit family in the Florida Keys that get turned upside down when the black sheep, Danny, I believe he's the oldest brother of the family, returns home. I talked about how I really enjoyed the first season, especially Ben Mendelsohn, I believe is how you pronounce his last name, his performance in the first season. I'll try to stay away from spoilers, but something big happens to his character at the end of season 1. You actually kind of see flashbacks or flash forwards, I guess, throughout the season towards basically the last half or the last quarter of the season. And so I was actually really curious to see what they were going to do without that character in season 2, because he is definitely a driving force for the whole show, because this family was just kind of minding their own business, kind of living their lives, and they were happy, and they kind of carved out these lives, even though they were separate. Obviously, they all lived pretty close together, and they were all in this one town, and they kind of helped each other run this hotel, and then Danny comes along, and like I said, he's kind of the black sheep, and he kind of tosses their world upside down, and so he's definitely the driving force in the first season. So I was curious to see what they were going to do with the show without that character. And they teased a new character at the end of season 1. And I'm being, of course, vague as to try to stay away from spoilers as much as possible. I've only actually watched the first couple of episodes of the second season. I think it was released on the 27th of May. So it hasn't been basically out for a week. And so I've only gotten through a couple episodes just because, like I said in the intro, I've been super busy at work. So there hasn't been too much of that particular new character that I mentioned in the first couple of episodes. It's really been kind of focusing on the repercussions for the family, given what happens at the end of season 1. I like how the two brothers, the two remaining brothers and the sister kind of have to come together. They did something at the end of season 1, and they're kind of paying the price for that, and they kind of have to band together. And I really appreciate that group dynamic, and I loved Ben Mendelsohn's portrayal of Danny. And so I was kind of scared to see, like, I was anxious to see if somebody was going to kind of be able to fill that void. Now he's in this season, but it's kind of in a flashback capacity, so he's not really in it very much. But Kyle Chandler, I haven't necessarily been super impressed with him. I wasn't a huge Friday Night Lights guy. I thought that was just, I wanted more football and less kind of soap opera, so I wasn't crazy about that show. So I haven't always been a big fan of him, but I think that he's kind of come into his own in the few episodes that I've seen of the second season. He was great in the first season as well, but he kind of gets overshadowed by Danny, and I think he's kind of coming into his own in the second season and kind of filling that void. So I'm definitely looking forward to the rest of season 2 because I really enjoyed season 1.
Yeah, I watched the pilot of this show, and I didn't dislike it or anything. I just didn't end up staying with it. It's something that I keep telling myself I'll go back and finish, but who knows if I actually ever will. I know that you liked it quite a bit, so it was kind of cool to see that it got a second season and it's going strong because you spoke so highly of it.
For sure. Like I said, I not as crazy about the second season so far as I was the first season, but I would definitely suggest it.
Cool. You ready for comics?
For sure. Tyler and I read a ton of comics each week, and we like to spotlight one or two a week. So what'd you read this week?
First, let me just say we took a fucking week off from comics.
I know.
Shit hit the fan, man.
I know.
Like we've had a big 2 weeks of comics. There's about, 5 or 6 different titles I could choose from to talk about. And it would be relevant to the discussions that are happening online. I'm going to go ahead and go with one that came out last week that, was not Captain America related. And that is, Rebirth #1. Me being a big DC fan, I was really looking forward to this book. It's 80 beautiful pages for $2.99. Written by Jeff Johns, who is a creative genius. So this comic, did you read it?
I have not.
Okay. So this comic is told from the point of view of Wally West, who is stuck in the Speed Force after the events of Flashpoint, which created the New 52 in 2011.
Okay.
So basically, 10 years are missing from the DC universe, and nobody remembers Wally West.
Okay.
Because I didn't read Flashpoint, but due to like timeline restructuring and time travel, which I know you're a huge fan of.
Yeah.
No one knows who Wally West is, and he's trying to reach out to various people in the DC universe right now to kind of as like his lightning rod. Like if he can find somebody and get them to remember him, they can suck him back into the universe away from the Speed Force. So he's kind of going from character to character and checking in. So he goes to Batman and he visits mostly members of the Justice League, and he finally goes to the one person who he's sure who's going to remember him, and that's his wife from before Flashpoint. And you get a lot of backstory if you're not familiar with Wally West and his character arc, and it really makes you care about his relationships. And spoiler alert, his wife doesn't end up remembering him and can't remember him, and he kind of basically gives up. He's like, all right, well, she doesn't remember me, nobody's going to remember me, and he just kind of becomes okay with dying. And it's really sad, man. Like Jeff Johns does it in a really spectacular way. Like I've never really read Wally West as the Flash, but I immediately cared about this character, and I think that's a testament to the way that Jeff Johns writes and how creative he is. It's really just heartbreaking watching him move from person to person that's been an important part of his life and them not remember him. So I won't get too much more into it than that. It sets up Rebirth really nicely. I don't want to get into spoiler territory though, since you haven't read it, but a lot of cool details do happen. And then the last few pages, it introduces things that are going to be probably happening in Rebirth or in the near future, setting big plans into motion, which was kind of a jaw dropper. So Johns, through this book, was able to wrap so many threads together while also kind of starting a new era for DC Comics. And just watching him do that was amazing. So some of the Rebirth comics that came out this week were Batman Rebirth #1, Green Arrow Rebirth #1, and Green Lanterns Rebirth #1. I was not going to read Green Lanterns Rebirth #1, but it's written by Jeff Johns, and this comic alone sold me on his writing. So I did pick up Green Lanterns. I haven't read it yet, but
I was going to ask you. I literally had it in my hand.
I'm really looking forward to see what he does with it. So.
I've decided, I don't know if I've told you this, Tyler, or not, but I've decided since Rebirth is starting, and I'm kind of embarrassed. Like, I'm obviously much more of a Marvel fan than I am a DC fan, almost to the point where it's like I'm just a Batman fan.
Yeah.
And so I'd like to read more DC, even though I probably won't stick with that. I really just want to kind of pick one title other than Batman and stick with it. And so I almost picked up Green Lanterns, and then I just decided against it. I think I'll wait until after Rebirth, kind of read the tea leaves and try to find out like which one is starting off really strong, and then try to backpedal and get a few issues that I've missed so far.
Yeah, for sure. It's kind of weird what they're doing. They did the Rebirth special, and then they're doing Batman Rebirth #1 and all these character Rebirth #1, and then there will eventually in the next month be Batman #1.
Yeah.
So it's kind of weird how they're doing that, but I'm excited. I'm excited to kind of jump in on some other DC comics I haven't read and start fresh.
So I don't know what you're going to bring up for nerd news, but did you read Captain America?
I mean, everybody knows what happened.
Yeah.
I just got my copy in the mail today because our comic book store obviously sold out of it really quick because anytime a comic is in mainstream news, people think it's going to be worth money and rush to the comic book store and buy it. So long story short, I have not read it, but of course, like I said, everybody knows the twist by this point.
Do you want to spoil it? Do you want to have a discussion about? I haven't read it either.
Is this the comic that you were going to bring up?
No.
I was going to say we need to probably at least touch on it. So if you want to touch on it now, we should.
Okay, that's cool. We can talk about it now. And then I'll just move on with my comic.
Cool.
So I have not read it yet.
Yep.
But obviously, like you said, I know what happens. I'm not a huge Captain America fan. I don't read any of his books. I'm not even sure why Sam Wilson is technically Captain America right now. But obviously, I know what happened, and it's a huge deal. And I understand why people are upset. I was equally upset when Dan Slott killed Peter Parker and made Doc Ock Spider-Man. I mean, it's just a huge... It kind of negates everything that's happened for like 70 years in this comic book, because he's been fighting these people for so long, and then to find out that he's some deep double agent I could understand why people would be upset about that. I personally am not upset because I don't care.
Yeah.
I mean, I care to a certain extent. I love comic books and I love Marvel, but Captain America's never been, I kind of feel like he's not necessarily in the superpower standpoint, but he kind of feels like that bland superhero, kind of like Superman to me. He's like Marvel Superman. He's just kind of the good old boy, kind of bland superhero. So I've never been all that interested in him. I think that they do a good job in the Marvel Cinematic Universe doing Captain America. But for me, he's never been a super interesting character. But I do understand why people are upset, the people that have read this for so long.
Yeah, I think that the people that are upset need to fucking get over it personally.
Really?
Yeah, it's a comic book. And that with one issue, they can completely negate anything that ever happened. Like, they kill characters off all the time, and characters are then brought back the next year. Like, shit happens in comic books all the time. This character is like, 60 or 70 years old at this point. Like, what else can you do to keep him fresh?
Yeah.
Like, I think that it's a really fresh idea. I read some stuff online that people were saying, like, this is a slap in the face of the people who created Captain America because they were Jewish.
Yeah.
And it's nothing like that.
I wouldn't go that far.
Yeah. I think it's a little ridiculous because, there's some stuff going on with the Cosmic Cube right now. And chances are these are all memories that were implanted into Steve Rogers' brain or some shit. And he actually, like, he thinks he's Hydra agent, but it's really not going to be his true memories. And something like that's going to happen. And even if it doesn't happen, like I said, some other writer can come along in the next 5 years and completely negate anything that happens in this comic run with an issue of his own. So I think that it's cool that they're trying something new with the character, and it's cool that they're trying something so drastic. Like you said, Captain America is the good old boy. So it's kind of cool to see him go a different route. Like, I'm excited. Like, I wasn't going to read this comic, and now I am. So they're doing what they set out to do.
I just don't think it makes sense. Like, how do you justify all of his actions to this point?
Yeah. I mean, if you're that deep in cover for however many years, what event at this point can bring you out of cover?
Yeah.
To where you say Hail Hydra like that. Like, like I said, I have not read the issue. I don't know what leads up to him saying it and revealing it, but you're right. It doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah. I actually read an interview with what is his name? Is it Nick Spencer?
That sounds right.
It's either Nate or Nick. I can't remember which one it is, but he's the writer. And I guess they've been planning this for a while, and they have a plan, obviously, to kind of answer the question of why he acts the way he is, but apparently he's been a Hydra agent the entire time. So I guess there's a plan in place, but I don't see how you justify 70 years of him being who he is and then end up being a Hydra agent. Like, that doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see what they can pull out of their ass, but
yeah.
I mean, it definitely, anything that gets the mainstream media talking about comic books
for sure
is good in my book. So,
all right, well, I'll just go ahead and get right into the book that I was going to talk about, a book that I've actually read. Civil War II, issue 1 came out last week. I talked about issue 0, I think a couple of weeks ago. It's the big event in Marvel Comics. Tyler talked about Rebirth, which is the big event in DC, and this is the big event in Marvel. Marvel likes to do one of these once a year, basically. Just these big events that kind of take place over the whole universe. It feels like they just got done with Secret Wars, and now they're doing Civil War, which I think on my last New Comic Book Day video, I called it Secret Wars, which I'll probably do at least once while I'm talking about Civil War. Issue 0 was kind of boring. Not a whole lot happens, but you kind of expect that with a 0 issue. They're not going to blow their load in an issue that technically doesn't count.
Yeah.
We should have made that the code word, blow your load.
Like how we say it every fucking episode.
For sure. Anyways, and I mentioned when I talked about issue 0 that I was afraid that the Terrigen Mist that happened, I believe it happened after Infinity, the big event in Marvel a few years ago, was going to play a big role in Civil War 2, and unfortunately that seems to be the case after reading issue 1. I'm not a huge fan of that particular storyline and the Inhumans. I like Black Bolt. Reader is kind of a cool character. Plus I love dogs, and so he has that dog, and so I think that's cool as shit. But there's a ton of exposition in this issue because they introduce a new Inhuman, and so you kind of have to get the readers up to speed. Like, he's brand new as far as I know, he's a brand new Inhuman, and he plays a huge role. He's basically the event that causes them to split. I don't know if you've read this or not.
I have.
Okay, cool. I was kind of talking. Well, I didn't want to spoil anything, but I also didn't know if you had read it or not. So basically, they introduce this new Inhuman, and he's the big event that kind of sets the sides. And all in all, I was happy. I mean, like I said, it did have some exposition, and I'm not crazy about the Inhumans, and obviously, unfortunately, they're going to play a big role in this event. I was happy, however, that Thanos seems to be playing somewhat of a role. It's always a villain that I appreciate. I don't know if he's always done great, but I love when he pops up from now and then. I feel like if you're going to have a big Marvel event, he kind of has to play a part in it. Hopefully his role pays off better than it did in Secret Wars. I had to actually think about it. Secret Wars, because I was a little disappointed with how his storyline paid off in that particular event. But all in all, I think it sets up the event really well, and I'm looking forward to issue 2.
Yeah, I really dug Civil War 1.
Oh, really?
Like, quite a bit. I enjoyed it a lot. I thought that the setup for the split was good. I don't want to spoil too much, but there are a couple casualties which kind of further the split, and I'm really excited for this event. I think it's going to be a fresh breath of air after Secret Wars, for me at least. Okay. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I don't want to have that argument again.
Yeah, if you can listen to that argument, like, from the issues, or the episodes from the end of last year,
for sure.
All right, man, you ready for nerd news?
Yep.
All right, so every week we talk about the big nerd headlines that have happened since the last time we spoke. This week's no different, so we'll get into nerd news. The first one is probably my favorite story from the last couple of weeks. So they're making another Halloween movie.
Yes.
Which is, at this point, you're just kind of roll your eyes, like, how many times can you do Michael Myers? What's cool about this, though, is that Blumhouse got the rights to it, and they're a pretty cool production company that's put out some cool stuff. They announced that John Carpenter is coming back to the series as an executive producer on this, and also like a creative, I guess you would say
consultant.
Yeah, exactly. A creative consultant. So he's going to have his hand in this movie just a little bit. I mean, I'm sure a lot of it's just putting his name on it so people get excited. Like, I don't know how much creative control he's going to have. Yeah, just the tip. Exactly. But just him being back in the Halloween franchise is pretty exciting to me because I love his Halloween movies and I love the Halloween franchise, and it needs kind of a jolt to get it back out there.
For sure. I think even though I appreciate them more than some hardcore fans, but I think they're trying to get the bad taste out of the Rob Zombie Halloween movies. Again, even though I appreciate them a little bit more than most people did, I think they're trying to get as far away from those particular movies as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. But that will be coming out, I believe, next year or two. I want to say 2017.
They're doing another Friday the 13th, aren't they?
Yeah, there was just some talk about that this week too. I don't actually have it in Nerd News, but I did read that article. It's going to be a new origin story for Jason. So
come on.
So yeah, Halloween's getting John Carpenter back, and we're getting a new origin for Jason. So which one are you looking forward to most?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. All right. So whenever Sony announced their plans with Spider-Man, and even whenever Spider-Man went back to Marvel and Sony and them are releasing it hand in hand, there were plans for an animated Spider-Man movie with Chris Lord and Phil Miller. Wait, no? Yes, Chris Lord and Phil Miller.
I mess it up every time.
Yeah, that's right. I'm thinking Last Man on Earth.
It's Phil Lord and Chris Miller. Okay. Because they combine them for Phil Miller, which is The Last Man on Earth.
Last Man on Earth.
That is literally the reason how I remember it.
So, side note, Last Man on Earth season 2 has been fantastic.
Oh yeah.
But anyways, they're making this animated Spider-Man movie, and people were kind of confused why they would be making this at the same time they're making live action Spider-Man movies. And it turns out that this is going to be a Miles Morales Spider-Man story.
Cool.
So he will be the focus of that. I don't know a ton about him. I haven't really read his comics too much. You probably know more than I do. He is the ultimate version, right?
He technically, that's how he started off.
Well, there's no
he is the Spider-Man now, even though there is a Peter Parker's Amazing Spider-Man. But Spider-Man, the Spider-Man title is Miles.
Well, there's the Amazing Spider-Man comic run, which is
Peter Parker.
And then there's one just called Spider-Man.
Yes.
And the Spider-Man that's in the all different Avengers is Miles Morales, correct?
Yes.
And am I saying that right? Miles Morales.
Yes.
Okay, cool. So I'm excited for this movie because not only will it be his first time kind of being brought to the spotlight, but it'll kind of show non-comic book readers this character that they might not be too familiar with, which I think would be pretty cool. Or comic book readers like me that aren't familiar with it, that character too. And
Lord Miller they're awesome. So they're going to do a great job.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. So I'm wearing my Captain Marvel shirt today.
Yeah.
For good reason. It came out a couple days ago that Brie Larson is in talks to play Carol Danvers, aka Captain Marvel, in the upcoming Captain Marvel movie that Marvel's going to be putting out. And personally, I think that's awesome casting. She's an Academy Award winning actress at this point. She's going to be in Kong Island or whatever that shit is.
Island. Kong Island, you fucking idiot.
Something like that. But
you just had a stroke.
Yeah. What is going on with us today? I think last week threw us off. No, but I think that she's a great actress, so that's pretty cool casting in my book.
For sure. I mean, that would be great. I was kind of, I wouldn't necessarily say I was rooting for Rousey, but I thought she'd be kind of cool. I think she obviously looks the part.
Yeah, I mean, I thought that would have been good too. I mean, I wouldn't have been upset if she had been cast, but I think now that I have Brie Larson in my brain, that's who I see as the
I
character.
mean, obviously, she's far and away the better actress.
Yes, that is. Well, I don't know. I've only seen Ronda Rousey act in Entourage the movie, and I will say that you got me there. She wasn't that great in that movie. So
yeah.
All right. Last story that will kind of segue into our main topic this week. So, one of the producers, I believe producers on Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Out of the Shadow, was kind of talking about Casey Jones' inclusion in the movie, and he basically said that Michael Bay forced them to put Casey Jones in the movie, and he goes on to say, like, oh, Michael Bay is a creative genius, and he was so right. Casey Jones makes this movie so much better, and we'll get into all that stuff when we get into our review.
Of course.
But I thought it was interesting. They thought that the movie was kind of overstuffed, and Michael Bay kept saying, no, you have to put Casey Jones in it. And he basically put his foot down and made that inclusion of that character happen.
Michael Bay is not a genius. And even though I liked Casey Jones, and obviously we'll get into our review here momentarily, but it was overstuffed for sure. But I liked Casey Jones. Casey Jones is not what you need to subtract from this movie.
So here's the actual quote from Michael Bay. He goes, so this guy says Michael Bay's got a golden gut. He would just call him and say, my gut is telling me that you need to figure out Casey Jones in this movie. He doesn't tell him why he feels that way. He just says, my gut.
Maybe he just had to poop.
Yeah, and it was on screen.
Yeah.
That being said.
Age of Extinction.
Yeah. All right, man. That's what I got for nerd news.
So I'm guessing you didn't like Out of the Shadows.
Actually, I'll get into it.
Yeah. Well, let's just go ahead and talk about it right now. Obviously, we're going to review TMNT Out of the Shadows, which is a sequel to the 2014 reboot. Tyler and I both enjoyed it. I think more than most critics did when that movie came out. I think it's 21% on Rotten Tomatoes, something like that. And this one, the last time I checked, was 38%. So, I mean, obviously it's not doing awesome, but it's doing at least better than the first movie.
We're down to 37.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, well, that is actually, honestly, that's bad on Rotten Tomatoes, but it's better than I thought it was going to be when I drafted it in our Rotten Tomatoes draft.
I'm a little disappointed. It was that 32% when I checked it at lunch today.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's gone up 5%.
Yeah. And then of course it'll get bumped up a little bit after our reviews. Anyways, Out of the Shadows focuses on Shredder, who escapes police custody and the Turtles in order to create mutants of his own in a plan to release a greater evil on Earth. So we start off each review by kind of giving our general overview of what we felt about the movie. We call it broad strokes. So Tyler, what do you think of TMNT Out of the Shadows?
So this is not a great movie by most standards.
Okay.
It's not
off to a good start.
It's not getting great reviews for a pretty good reason. Some people aren't going to get it, even if they're familiar with TMNT. But in 20 years, there's going to be a group of nerds out there that are going to look back on this movie fondly, just like I do on TMNT and The Secret of the Ooze, which is not a great movie, but was an important part of my childhood and my nerd origin and me loving Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Whenever I got out of this movie, there was a dad and son that I was walking behind out to our cars, and they were talking about the movie.
You went into a separate car, right?
Yes, I did not follow them. And the dad was talking about how it was an award-winning movie, but that it was a lot of fun, and that's all that matters, right? And they seemed to really enjoy it. And that kind of hit me a little bit. This is a popcorn movie about mutant turtles. You can't take it too seriously. In the end, you just kind of have to suspend your expectations at the door. All that being said, there is a better TMNT story that they could have told.
For sure.
But this movie did have its fun moments.
I think we're going to agree once again, like we did. We were very similar after the first movie. And I think that it sounds like we're going to be very similar thoughts on this movie as well. I don't know if I can be objective because obviously I love this franchise. There are things about this movie, especially with the story that we'll get into here momentarily, that aren't good. Flat out just awful. But like you said, this is a popcorn movie, and you're not expecting a good story. Like it's kind of a ridiculous concept. You're taking that leap of faith with this movie and with this franchise, and it is a lot of fun. These movies are really fun. Now the creature design could be better, and I do think that there is a really good TMNT movie that could be out there. I think the franchises has the pieces to make a really good movie. I just don't know if they I don't know if they necessarily don't want to make a good movie, because I think that would hurt the box office, because I think this is a franchise that unfortunately tends to be geared towards children, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but the comic book, not so much. I think the comic book right now is fantastic, but it's a little bit darker.
Yeah.
So I don't know if they necessarily want to make that movie, because that movie doesn't make as much money. But it is a kind of a silly concept. And I don't think that they've exactly done it right, but these movies are fun. They are really fun. And I'm not mad that there's going to be a new generation of kids that love the Ninja Turtles, not because of the 87 cartoon, which is why I love them, but they love it because of these movies, which have the heart of the 87 cartoon. So I appreciate that. And I did have a lot of fun in this movie, even though by movie standards, it's not a good one.
Yeah.
All right. So let's jump right into the story. So what'd you feel about the story?
So all of the stuff that we've said about it being fun and set aside, they tried to cram way too much into this movie.
For sure.
So Krang especially. So
oh, really?
Krang is never explained at all in this movie.
Yeah.
And like you go from one scene to all of a sudden Shredder's in the same room with Krang.
Yeah.
And Krang's just like, I want to take over the world. And I don't know how much explanation you need to give that character, but they never say Dimension X, do they?
Not that I'm aware
And
of.
I don't know, like, people know who Krang is, and I get it, but you still, if you're introducing a character like that in this movie, you have to explain him some way. So that's one of the things that really kind of hit a sore spot with me with the story. I love the purple ooze, though, that they end up getting from Krang. I think that is kind of a cool callback to the secret ooze, which
sure.
I've already brought up a couple times. I think there's definitely some parallels to that movie. There's a nice nod to Vanilla Ice.
Yeah, I like that.
Which was pretty cool. And I really love the addition of Bebop and Rocksteady. I thought that they were
absolutely
awesome comic relief. I was a little bit nervous about the actors portraying them. I know Sheamus from wrestling. I'd forget the other guy's name, but he's a character actor. He's been in a ton of stuff. Yep. But they were fantastic. They
really were.
They really brought those characters to life, and I was really impressed with the comedy and the levity they brought to it. While those are cool aspects of the movie, the story has a hard time flowing. Like all of a sudden they have to make a random trip to Brazil.
Yep.
And that one sequence kind of throws off the pacing of the rest of the movie and kind of muddles it a little bit. So there's a lot of cool stuff that I liked, but as far as the story flowing, it doesn't work out too well.
Yeah, obviously I tease this a little bit in my broad strokes, but this is my least favorite aspect of this movie is the story. Before I get kind of into trashing the story, I will say that I appreciated that they kind of shift the focus, because the first movie, it's about the Turtles, but it's really April's story. And they shift the focus from April and Vern to the Turtles in this movie.
Which is good.
Yeah, I appreciated that. But this story was so odd because it's a pretty simple story. When you kind of break it down to bare bones, it's a pretty simple story. Shredder has to collect all these pieces to create this machine to take over the world. Like, it's not a super complex story.
Yeah.
But they made it weirdly convoluted by like over explaining like every little thing. And they used a lot of what I call comic book science, even though this is not a comic book, but they just use like scientific sounded words to like over explain every little thing. And for me, we're not here to see Inception, man. We're here to see turtles fight other mutants and fight Shredder. Like, you take that leap of faith with these particular movies that we're here to have fun. And I don't need you to explain every little thing. I get that you want to collect all these pieces because you just want an excuse for the turtles to fight Shredder and fight Bebop and Rocksteady in different places, like Brazil, for example. And even though that scene, I will completely agree with you that it did kind of pace the movie weird, it was fun. It was, they got to fight in an airplane and they had a tank and it was a lot of fun. That scene was just, I enjoyed it a lot. I felt like a little kid again watching this movie, but it didn't make a whole lot of sense. And so I felt like they bogged themselves down in just silly stuff. Like I felt like they wanted to explain every little detail, and you don't need to. Like I suspend my belief when I go see these movies. I don't need you to science it up and just over explain every little thing.
That was like the whole purpose of Tyler Perry's character.
Yeah. Which I will get into his character here in a little bit.
But just to science it up, I don't want to interrupt you too much, but like the explanation he gives for why Bebop and Rocksteady mutate into a rhino.
I rolled my eyes. I literally rolled my eyes.
That was awful, man.
And I feel like they missed an opportunity to turn him into the Fly. Like as soon as he mentioned that, I was like, he's gonna get shot with one of these darts and he's gonna turn into a Fly. And that never happened, and I was very disappointed.
Yeah. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, I've actually already read an article where he said that, like, if he's in a third one, which I'm not even sure for sure that they're gonna make a third one, because I don't know if this movie is doing as well as they thought it was going to, but he's already said that if he was in the third one, he's going to turn into a Fly in the third one. But anyways, I feel like that was a missed opportunity in this movie. I liked how simple Shredder was. Obviously, there's that huge mech Shredder thing in the first movie, which was horrible. Michael Bay definitely transformed that shit up, which was awful. I liked how simple he was in this movie, but I didn't like how he kind of played second fiddle to Krang at the end. Like, he's dispatched very easily.
Yeah.
And then Krang's kind of dispatched pretty easily too. And so that was kind of disappointing.
Yeah. No, you're exactly right.
All right. So we'll just go ahead and move right on to performances. It's kind of tough to judge performances in this movie because a lot of stuff was done through CGI and voice acting. I will say that Megan Fox is what she is. She's not a good actress. She doesn't necessarily have to be in this movie. I will say that I'm kind of torn because I mentioned when we reviewed the first movie that I appreciated. She is a gorgeous woman. She really is. And I appreciated that in the first one, that's not what she wasn't in the movie just to be a sex symbol. So I appreciated that. In this movie, I'm kind of torn because I appreciated that in the first movie, but I was kind of disappointed that there's a particular scene that is literally the only
the
reason.
first scene she's in.
Pretty much, yeah. And that's all that is. But I'm also a man and I love boobies, and that scene was pretty awesome. So I was a little bit disappointed in a sense that they went to that cheap scene, but again, I love boobies. So
yeah,
I just want to emphasize that I love boobies.
Performance wise, I mean, I love the Turtles. I love the relationship between the Turtles and the actors portraying them via CGI and the voice acting. They really made me believe that they're brothers. And,
for sure.
You know, I would imagine, like, you talk all the time about how much you love Andy Serkis and what he's able to do through motion capture. And I don't want to take that away from them in this movie because I imagine that it's hard to portray a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle via motion capture and kind of bring them to life like that. And I think that they succeed. I think it was probably a good idea to get rid of Johnny Knoxville.
For sure.
He was distracting to me as Leonardo in the first one. and this one he's just more like normal, not Johnny Knoxville, and I like that quite a bit. You mentioned Megan Fox. I don't think she brings anything to the movie. She doesn't take away from it, but she doesn't do anything spectacular as April, and I don't think anybody expected her to.
She is what she is.
I guess the other person to talk about, the last person for me at least, is Stephen Amell as Casey Jones. I'll be honest, in the end, I don't really buy him as Casey Jones. He tried super hard, and he tried really hard to differentiate it from Arrow, but I look at him and I see Pretty Boy Arrow, and to me, Casey Jones is like a grungy hockey playing guy, and he's just too pretty, man.
Yeah, I completely agree. I don't buy him as the hockey player.
Yeah.
I mean, they tried really hard to convince you that he loves hockey, but I never bought into it. But yeah, he was, I mean, he didn't take away from the movie. I liked that Casey Jones was in this movie.
Yeah.
I'm not an Arrow fan, and I think they included him because of that.
I think that you're right. I think Casey Jones needed to be in this movie, and as much as I hate to say it, Michael Bay was probably right.
Yeah.
Because he's such a big part of TMNT lore that you gotta bring him in sooner rather than later, especially if you're already gonna bring in Crane. So I'm glad he was in the movie. I just would have liked to see somebody else cast in that role.
For sure. I think that Will Arnett was underused, but I'm always gonna say that because I love Will Arnett. I loved the Falcon stuff. Yeah. I loved how he kept calling himself the Falcon.
Yeah.
Thought that was really cool. I liked how that was a kind of, I understood that progression from the first movie. Like that would be a character like that arc was believable for me. I could appreciate that's who that character would be given that situation. Tyler Perry was fucking awful in this movie.
Oh yeah, for sure.
He was cringeworthy.
He comic booked it up, man.
Oh yeah, it was awful.
That happened in another recent movie where somebody, I think it's one of those things where
Jesse Eisenberg and Batman v Superman.
No, not quite. That's what
it reminded me of.
But you get cast in a comic book movie and you're not really a comic book fan. And I think he said that he did this so his kids can watch something he does.
Yeah.
Where he's not a fat old woman.
Yeah.
And, you're not familiar with the source material. So you just like go ape shit with your performance. And that's exactly what he did. I saw the trailer and I was actually really excited when the first trailer was released. And I think I even said something on Facebook or maybe Instagram that even his little bit in the trailer, I was scared because it looked awful. And every fear about him was realized in this movie. Yeah.
He was cringeworthy. It was awful. And like I said, they missed a great opportunity to turn him into a fly.
Yep.
But, that's pretty much all I have for performances unless I'm forgetting somebody.
If you're forgetting somebody, then they were meant to be forgotten.
So normally we'll talk about the action, but I feel like we could talk about the CGI and action, kind of lump those two things in one another. I loved Krang. I loved how he looked. I wasn't crazy about the creature design in the first movie. Maybe it's just because I've seen the first one a couple of times and I've kind of just gotten over that, but it looked a little bit better. Maybe they look completely the same. I don't know. But for some reason, I felt okay about it.
Yeah. I mean, that was my big complaint about the first one was like, you made them monsters.
Yeah.
Like they're not Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles superheroes that I love. They are monsters from the sewer.
Yeah.
And, I didn't like that. And I've forgiven it at this point. I think they've been everywhere. They've been plastered everywhere for the last 2 or 3 years. So I think, like you said, we've gotten used to it.
Yeah, the toys still look awful.
Oh, fucking terrible, man.
Yeah. I really want to like the design because I think, like I said, these movies are really fun and I'd like to collect all the toys, but they just look so awful.
Oh, yeah, you can't.
Yeah.
They make it impossible.
But I thought Krang was awesome. I thought he looked badass. He was kind of actually somewhat creepy looking. Like if you were a little kid, I think I would be creeped out by that.
He looked like chewed up gum.
He did actually. And like I said, I liked that Shredder was simple. They definitely, heard that criticism and toned it down a lot. I mean, he still has the
Wolverine claws?
Yeah. I couldn't think of a good description of them. They're pretty exaggerated, but
Yeah.
it's not the whole time.
Yeah.
And he's not shooting them out.
I mean, in the first one, he like has Wolverine claws, then those claws have claws,
Yeah.
and then those claws have the claws. So
For sure.
they dialed it back a little.
But I obviously I didn't like how he was dispatched pretty quickly.
So I like the CGI. We touched on that. The action was fun. I am not a fan of the third act action piece.
Yeah, and
with
it's
Krang.
kind of been disappointing.
It's the same exact thing that happens in the first one.
Yeah,
almost.
and then the first one wasn't that great either.
It's like, well, we got to go to the top of this building and fight some shit.
Yeah.
Like that's essentially what happens again in this one. It has a Transformers vibe to it, which I hate.
Oh, for sure.
I think that the action's a lot more fun when it's grounded. So like when they're in the plane or in Brazil and it's just them fighting Bebop and Rocksteady. Like that's fun.
Those
stuff.
scenes were really fun.
Yeah.
I loved them.
So then you go balls out with the climax of it and it's just too much.
Oh yeah, for sure. I would have liked to see more Krang. For sure.
Yeah.
I think that there is a good Krang story that you could do, and I think he was, as much as I appreciate that he's in this movie, he was definitely forced in this movie.
Oh yeah. I wonder if Michael Bay had his little greasy paws on that one too.
Yeah, for sure.
You gotta put Casey Jones and Krang in this one.
And the Techno Bowl dome yeah. And, that was weird. That was really we have to get all these pieces together, and that seemed like that. I don't know, but that's more story. That's just obviously a big plot hole in the story.
Oh, for sure.
But I mean, that's pretty much all I have for TMNT Out of the Shadows.
Yeah, me too.
All right, so let's go ahead and put a cap on it and give our star rating. So would you give this out of 5 stars?
So I'm gonna go the same exact reasoning I rated X-Men Apocalypse what I did. I'm gonna give it a 3 because that's the lowest I can give it and consider it me recommending it. So it's the softest recommend I can do, but it is fun. It is a popcorn movie. It's probably one of the more fun movies that's come out in the last few weeks. So, I mean, take your kids to it, whatever. But don't expect it to be Schindler's List or anything. That was
a weird comparison. I definitely don't expect Schindler's List. That would be weird.
I should have said don't expect Civil War. But I went to like, what's an Oscar? Just off the top of my head, Oscar winning movie, and I went Schindler's List. So I apologize.
I promise you, there are literally 0 Jews that get killed in this movie.
All right, man.
God damn it.
What's your star rating?
I'm going to give it the exact same star rating, 3 stars. This movie is, by movie standards, is not very good. The story obviously is really convoluted and kind of silly, but it's a lot of fun, like we said. And I believe I gave the first one 3 stars. And I just can't, as much as I enjoyed this movie, I just can't give it 3.5 because there's a lot of wrong with this movie, but it's a lot of fun as well. So 3 stars, the softest recommend we can give. So 3 stars for the both of us.
All right, man. You ready to cap this thing off?
For sure.
So every episode we cap everything off with a nerd favorite. We're both huge nerds, and something that nerds in this culture love to do is ask each other what our favorite blank is. This week's no different, and it is my week. So, Pat, I'm going to ask you what your favorite Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle character is that is not one of the turtles. I wanted to do who's your favorite turtle, but I feel like that's a bit of a cop-out. So
for sure,
I'll give you time to think. For what it's worth, my favorite turtle is Leo. But I would have to say, and I have a kind of a shitty reason for why he's my favorite non-turtle character. So, mine is Splinter. And
that's basically a turtle.
I know. And it's kind of a cop-out, but
it's like saying your favorite villain is Shredder.
The reason he's my favorite goes back to me collecting the action figures.
Okay.
So, I mean, everybody had the 80s, early 90s action figures.
Sure.
I mean, I think I still have them in a box in my parents' basement.
I still have a lot of them, yeah.
And they're so cool. They were so much fun. And I always wanted a Splinter. Like, I had 3 or 4 versions of all the turtles. They had like they put out absurd versions of each turtle, and I had them all. But I never had a Splinter. And I remember one day I was homesick from school, and my dad brought me an action figure. I guess just to make me feel better or whatever. And it was Splinter, and it was like the coolest fucking Splinter action figure. It was like it had real hair on it. That sounds creepy. But it was fuzzy. And I don't know, it was just a really badass action figure, and it made me appreciate it sounds dumb, but it made me appreciate the character more than, if I would have watched TMNT Out of the Shadows where he's barely used. I don't know. He's not the most interesting character. He's pretty basic. He's their dad, and he's a master of, martial arts and so on and so forth. Like, he's pretty standard, but for whatever reason, that action figure and finally getting that in my collection when I was little made me really appreciate the character. So
Tyler's favorite non-turtle character is Splinter because he got an action figure with some dude's pubes on it.
Essentially.
All right, cool.
Well, who's yours?
My favorite, and I'm going to totally cop out because I want to pick two, but it's a Bebop and Rocksteady because you have to put those two together. They're cool as shit. Like, they're basically the villain versions of the Turtles, and they appear in the first episode of the Turtles of the 87 cartoon, and I've loved that cartoon for so long, and that's an episode I've seen probably 1,000 times, and I fell in love with them. I just thought it was the coolest thing when I was a little kid, they were Ninja Turtles that fought other, like, mutant animals, and I just thought that was the coolest fucking thing. Yeah. I actually thought that was played up pretty well. That was probably my favorite joke of the whole movie. Yeah.
I'm a little piggy.
So, yeah, I mean, it's not a really, like, articulate and well thought out answer. It's just that they're the first real villains that they fought in, the cartoon, and I just kind of fell in love with that zoo scene and as a kid, and I love the idea of the Turtles fighting these other two mutants.
Yeah. This is off topic, but I wanted to say this in the review and I forgot. The best part of that movie is the fucking credits.
Oh yeah?
Did you not stay for them or anything? Like, it's the classic song, man.
Yeah, no, I mean, I stayed for some of the credits, but I knew that it didn't have an after credit.
Yeah, I stayed for the theme song.
Yeah?
It gave me chills. It was awesome.
Yeah, it was pretty cool.
All right, man. That's all I have.
All right, cool. So as always, you can follow us on Twitter at The Nerds Podcast. It's also at The Nerds Podcast on Instagram as well. You can like us on Facebook, follow us on Google+. Definitely check us out at Indie PopCon. It runs from June 17th to 19th. We will be booth 351. And the first person that says the stupid Cowabunga code word will get our free large t-shirt. So hopefully you wear large. And you can vote for us for Podcast of the Month at podcastland.com. Comment and subscribe to our YouTube channel, The Nerds You're Looking For. Check out our new Twitch channel. Rate, review us on iTunes, Stitcher Radio. Basically any good podcatcher you use, we're on it. You can also email us at thenerdsyou'relooking4@gmail.com. For Patrick Kuhn,
Tyler Hunt,
we are The Nerds You're Looking For. Take it easy, guys.
Cowabunga.
I hate you. Testing. 1, 2, 3.
Chitty chitty chit chat.
I hate you.